Well, the SA Weather Service has issued a heatwave warning across parts of the Northwest, Free State as well as Gauteng provinces, with scorching temperatures expected to continue until Sunday. Johannesburg Emergency Management Services spokesperson Mr. Robert Mulaudzi, we are expecting him to join us on the line to basically give us tips on how you at home can also just take those precautionary measures against this heat. I know the temperatures have reached the high 30s. Mr. Robert Mulaudzi joins us now. Robert, how can people keep themselves safe and hydrated during this heat wave?
Good afternoon and afternoon to the viewers. Yes, we advise our residents out there to continue to stay hydrated by making sure that they drink lots of water, and also try and avoid direct sunlight, especially between around 11 and 3 in the afternoon, since that is the time where it's extremely hot.
And Robert, what about those who live in informal settlements? I mean, that also don't have access to running water in their taps?
Yeah, the advice will be maybe to store maybe water in the bucket, make sure that they do have like water inside their, dwellings. Just to avoid that, moving up and down in the direct sunlight. So I think that will be the best way to try and avoid being in the direct sunlight. And of course, those people who are working directly in the sunlight, we encourage them to take regular breaks, and of course have a lot of water, because the exposure to extremely hot temperatures like the ones we're having now can lead to heat exhaustion, heat cramps, which might also lead to heat stroke.
And have you had any reported incidents of such illnesses being reported in high numbers, Robert, in the various hospitals around the area?
Oh, right now we are not offering the ambulance service part. We're mostly focusing on the fire services. So far, we have not yet maybe received a number of fire incidents which have been caused by the heat wave which we have. Hence, we encouraging our residents out there to exercise caution, because we will always have a risk of failed fires now that it's extremely hot. However, we remain on high alert to make sure that we can be able to attend to all the incidents which might occur over this weekend, since we are told that we still have this heat wave throughout the weekend.
All right, and that's exactly what I wanted to ask, Robert. I mean, we've seen quite a few fires across the country, some related to the heat. What can we do then as preventative measures?
Yeah, it's to make sure that maybe those who igniting fires, they need to make sure that those fires are controllable, especially in the areas in the farms whereby they might be conducting some farming in the area, and then try to make sure that if they do starting fires, those fires are controllable. And also, of course, maybe people who are smoking, they don't throw maybe their cigarettes in the areas where there's a lot of field where it might cause fires. And then those fires might cause extremely, damages to, areas where we might have, nature reserves, and a lot of, field in our communities out there, which might be disastrous to our environment and also some animals in those areas.
And Robert, what about those areas that are like far-flung areas where, of course, the reaction units or the access to emergency response is quite lowered? What can those people do if they are faced with a fire?
Yeah, in most of the cases in those areas, the fire service of today, most of the time they will have, fire barriers where they are trained in terms of making sure that they prevent fires as and when they occur. If they do, they will have some items which they use, for instance, some grass beaters, where it's a handheld fire extinguishing device, which residents are trained in most of those areas, where the farming areas, where they can be able to use, as a grass beater to try and extinguish that fire during its incipient phase. So those are some of the measures which, most of the fire services in the country, we try and make sure that our residents are empowered with, basic skills which they might use as and when they have emergencies in their areas.
And Robert, very quickly, I mean, looking at all these fires, I mean, the other fire just claimed the lives of 6 soldiers in the Northern Cape. How important then are fire evacuation drills at this point? And how can you then better encourage people to actually adhere to those rules and regulations around the fire drills?
Yeah, from our side, as the city of Johannesburg, we've got a unit which mostly focuses on public education, which is peer, which is has got men and women who normally go out to our communities to empower them about the necessary skills, basic firefighting, how to use the fire extinguishers, basic evacuation procedures. We're starting it from the early childhood development centers up until our elders in our communities. So these centers are based in all our 7 regions, where we encourage our residents to visit these areas, because this is where they get these kind of skills. And these skills, they might not need them today, but tomorrow, who knows, they might need these skills. So they are actually trained on basic firefighting. We know that they are not firefighters, but that basic knowledge of using a fire extinguisher can save a life. That basic use of maybe using a bucket as and when there's a fire, it can save a life. So we're encouraging our residents to continue to visit these areas. I mean, if you are residing within the city of Johannesburg, you'll know that we've got about 7 regions in the city of Johannesburg. In all these regions, we've got a Be Safe Center which operates normally from Monday to Friday, but over the weekends our officials are able to visit areas where, let's say, it's a community forum, or area where residents will want us to come and educate them about this life and fire safety educational programs. We're able to come where they are. It can be under a tree in a community hall. We are able to our trainings are designed in such a way that we can be able to conduct them anywhere at any time.
And are you able to give people in informal settlements this kind of training, Robert?
Yes. That is actually, as and when we introduce this kind of training, as Alicia, that is where we were focusing on. But however, now that we are having incidents, in almost everywhere, even in our suburban areas, the training is conducted everywhere. So, with the focus, of course, of our residents in our informal settlements, because they are vulnerable to fire incidents, as and when we have, like it's summer now, when we have rainfalls, they are vulnerable to flooding. So we try and make sure that we train them on disaster preparedness, all the necessary skills which they need as and when they need to evacuate people, things like using whistles to alert their neighbors to move to higher ground, and also how do they evacuate as and when they have fire incidents, how do they form up a chain to try and extinguish the fire before us as professionals arrive there. If somebody has got an medical emergency, what is it that they do maybe to stop bleeding if somebody is injured and so forth.
Right.
So those kind of programs are there. We're conducting them. Our residents can be able to call us on our central reservation number, which is for public education purposes only, which is 011-758-5050. So we are able to come to wherever they are to try and educate them about these life and fire safety educational programs.